Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 353. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. Today we ask the question, are you truly comfortable with life being good? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Now, we recorded this episode quite a while back. We recorded it, I would say, mid-March, before I was supposed to go on my Camino Portugues walk, before we went into lockdown, quarantine all over the world. So we were in a very different place when we recorded this episode. Which is why I'm actually re-recording the intro to it, because I need to acknowledge the fact that life is different now. Very, very different. How things have changed in such a short time. So I debated about changing the date of this episode and maybe releasing it later, but honestly, I think it is timely because even though we were in a different mind space when we recorded this, I've actually struggled a little bit with this since lockdown, because my life is pretty much life as usual during lockdown. I've discussed this before in previous episodes. Obviously, some things are different, some things have changed, but I'm doing pretty well. And I really feel uncomfortable talking about that publicly because a lot of people are really not doing well. So I think this is a valid episode to be released now. So again, we ask the question, are you truly comfortable with life being good? Sometimes we get so used to the identity of struggle or of building a business or working to achieve our goals, that we don't pick up our heads to see that we've already arrived, whether it's at the final goal or at one of our milestones. We forget to celebrate. And even if we do, sometimes it can be really hard to share our success with our friends. It can be uncomfortable to realize that life is actually quite good. And that's weird. It's a very strange as I'm saying this, I know I've experienced it, but it's strange. So what are you going to learn today? You're going to learn how to shift into the new identity of life being good. We discuss what to do if you feel guilty about sharing great news with friends. We discuss how to get comfortable with things being good. We share why you don't only need help and support when things are going bad. You also need help and support when things are going well. And finally, we talk about how to feel like you belong, even when things have changed for you. So that is today's episode. And without further ado, here you go.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Holly.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Looking forward to today's topic, which is...
As always.
Yeah. Sometime we should come to the table with something we don't want to talk about. I'm really not looking forward to today's top podcast topic.
Well, we did one like that. We talked, you made me talk about forgiveness. I did not want to talk about that.
All right. So today we're going to talk about, we asked the question, are you truly comfortable with life being good? And the answer is probably not, maybe not. We often think we want our lives to be a certain way, but then when we're on the path there and we kind of get there, we're over the tipping point to getting there, we're not super comfortable with it. So here we are.
I think it's just because it's an identity thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about when we were preparing this episode, that it's an identity thing. And when we're kids, when we're teenagers, when we're in our 20s, whatever, we need to fight for things, or we feel like we need to fight for things. And there's a certain, because we're building up our life, right? There's a certain trajectory to life. And so for those years, first you have to go to school and you have to work towards a degree, and then you have to get your first job. You have to convince someone to hire you, and then you have to keep that job and get promoted. And there's this kind of achievement progression that we're working towards. And then eventually many people, a lot of people will end up in a place where things kind of settle down a little bit, right? And actually, this is something we didn't talk about, Holly, when we were preparing, but now that I'm talking about it, I think that's when people get midlife crises.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when we have people kind of saying, oh, like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Like, what now? You know, now I have my house and my partner and my child and my job.
Yeah.
Like, what now? And also, I'm still not super happy. So
yeah,
what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. 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 It's like all the things that they thought they wanted, all the things that they thought would be fulfilling aren't giving them the internal results that they wanted. Like they got the external stuff. They've ticked all the boxes, but like inside, it's just not that satisfying.
Yeah. And so when you get to that point where life is actually pretty good, we get uncomfortable because it's not what we're used to. We're not used to like not having something to fight for or to complain about.
Yeah.
And there's like, I mean, I think that's a separate episode as well. Like, you know, getting all those things and still being dissatisfied and kind of realizing that those aren't the things you wanted.
Yeah.
Even if they were the things you wanted.
Yeah.
You're so used to like having to like move towards them and create them. Sometimes I find like people don't even notice that they have everything they've wanted.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like I think a lot of times people are like, so they're like on that track to, you know, I've got to get these things. I've got to get these things. They don't realize when they've arrived. They don't realize when they've got the things they wanted. 'Cause it's like they haven't picked up their head to look around and see how everything fits together into their current situation.
Yeah, because they're used to, you know, having that or living that identity of moving towards or struggle or building. Like it doesn't have to be struggle in the sense of like life is really hard, but just that energy of building something. Like the energy of building a house is different to the energy of living in that house and enjoying your house.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? And I think like, I don't think we give enough kind of attention or focus to that transition. So we're going to assume that the things you want are things you want. Because I think if they're not, then that's a different episode.
Yeah.
Different problem.
Yes.
Right? But let's say like you've built your house or like you've built enough of it so that you can live in it now.
Yeah.
Relatively comfortably. Like you might still want to like put in an extension, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's relatively comfortable. And that's a very different energy. It's kind of a settling in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Housewarming.
Yeah.
I don't know why this, I mean, I'm currently concerned with houses, so maybe that's why this analogy has come in. But it makes sense, right?
It totally does. It totally does. Yeah. Like you're in the house, you built the house you wanted. Like maybe you still want to do some things to the garden. Maybe you want to pop a conservatory in the side, but like it's good. Like it's the house you wanted, you built it, it's done, and you got to settle into it.
Yeah.
And enjoy it.
And even if it's not like totally done, right? Because like, I think you can feel comfortable living in your house before like all the rooms are ready. So like maybe like only one room is livable right now.
Yeah.
Like maybe you've only done the one room and you have the kitchen and the bathroom, right? And the rest of the house is still a mess.
Yeah.
But you've still arrived in a certain space, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just adding on. It's very different to like not having the house at all and have to be thinking about what foundations would actually hold it solid, you know, so that it's solid and stable. And like when you can't even imagine what it will look like, even though you might have like sketches and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how's your house looking, Holly? Like you, right? Like, well, you know, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah. I felt a big shift this year in 2020. I feel like I've hit a major kind of tipping point. I feel like for the last 10 years, I've been like working really hard and not necessarily seeing the results that I wanted or not feeling the results. But I've kind of kept going. And I keep kind of like pivoting and like refining my path and refining my vision. And I feel like this year I've got clarity and I'm doing the work and finishing the projects and seeing the results, but most importantly, feeling like I'm finally doing the work I want to be doing, completing the projects I want to be completing, and just feeling like things have shifted. It's like I've shifted from that uphill struggle to kind of coasting.
Right?
Yeah. And that's a massive, massive shift. And we're only, you know, not even 3 months into the year. We're in March now as we record this, but like, it feels very different, and it's kind of hard to talk about.
Which is why we're doing this episode.
Exactly.
Yay!
Yay! So, like, it's easy for me to talk about this, I think, kind of in an abstract way. Like, the things that I just said are easy. But, for example, there was a Master Gut call, maybe it was a month or so back. It was a couple calls back, or maybe 3 calls back, where I talked about, like, how financially things are going better as well. And that was really uncomfortable for me to talk about. And I think I said this to you guys about how I feel really uncomfortable saying that things are going better,
And why? But why does it feel so uncomfortable? I'm going to grill you a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
And then I can grill myself, or you can grill me. But like, because I think like you're not the only one, right?
Yeah,
like we all arrive in that place, and we're like, should I tell people? Should I not tell people?
Yeah.
Like, I have a certain identity, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're all in it together. We're all struggling together.
Yes.
We're all building together.
Yeah.
And then your house is
Done.
kind of more finished.
Yeah. So why? Because I think it goes back to that identity thing. And I think I talked about identity so many times on the podcast over the years, but I think it's a really big thing for me. Like, it's like I've cemented that identity for the last 10 years of struggling, working, building, and not seeing results. And now it's like I don't know who I am now that I'm in that coasting phase and things are going better.
Yeah, I think like we get so stuck in that building phase of like building something, and it's very difficult to get out of, like, and even like when you're in it, the best thing you can do is get out of it and like look at what you're building from the perspective of like already being successful with it. Cause that's like a better energy. Cause like for me, like I noticed like for business as an example, like I noticed at some point that I was really stuck in identifying myself as building a business.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be building forever.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. Do you know about that?
No.
Okay. This is a great analogy for your house thing. So Sarah Winchester she was the heir to the Winchester Rifle Company. This was like back in Victorian times. She had this Victorian house, and she was really into like seances and like mediums and stuff. And so some medium told her that, I forget the details. I haven't been to this house since I was like 10. It's a huge tourist attraction. It's super cool. They told her that if she wanted to live forever, she had to keep adding on to the house. And she was also, because she was so into mediumship, she was like scared of like spirits and stuff. So anyway, so she kept adding on to this house, and it's this huge old Victorian house, but she also built, it's so cool. She also built like stairways that go nowhere. So like she could like trick the spirits. She has like doorways that go nowhere. It's so cool.
How did I miss this?
Oh my God.
I've been to San Jose.
Okay, it's so cool. Anyway, it's like that. Like, you can keep building forever. She kept building, like, until the day she died. She was, like, adding on and, like, making changes to her house. Like, even though you have a super cool Victorian mansion, you can keep adding on to it. Like, it can be never enough because your beliefs...
So you get stuck in that.
You get stuck in
that building phase, right?
Yeah.
So you arrive in this... Like, I'm not saying like all your goals have been achieved, right? Like, but you arrive in this place where things are going more smoothly and more easily. And basically you're starting to get all the things you've been asking for and working towards. And life just starts feeling good. And then we get uncomfortable because why? Because we're expected to like be in this flow of struggle.
It's like we don't know who we are when we're not struggling. Like we haven't seen that new identity. We haven't really embodied that new identity. And I think it's because of something you said a couple of minutes ago about like when you're building, it's like your head's down and you're building, but you never stop and lift up your vision to see that kind of bird's eye view of the thing that you're building. It's like you haven't lifted your head up to see that like the house is there, like you've built it.
Yeah, so, or like at least you have, a couple of rooms you can hang out in. Like it's partly done and you can relax a little bit. I think it's like we don't allow ourselves to just relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And not just enjoy, because I think there has been a lot of talk about like celebrating your wins and enjoying your life. Like, but we don't let ourselves kind of take the foot off the pedal.
Yeah. And we don't have to be like going all the time. Like we can go, and then relax a little bit, then go, and then relax a little bit, or, whatever works for you. I'm very aware that in this episode, my hands are like all over the place.
Yeah, you guys don't see that, but they are. She's waving her hands around like crazy. Not just her hands, because that'd be weird. Her arms.
Yes.
Her arms. Yeah, so why are we not comfortable with life being good? So part is getting stuck in an identity of like being, in the process, basically.
But also that identity of struggling. Like if you're struggling and your friends are struggling and all you talk about is the struggle, like it can be hard to be the one to say, I'm not struggling anymore.
Yeah, I just want to take it a little bit away from struggle, because struggle is like when you're like, it doesn't have to be that bad for you to get stuck in that place, right? Because you could just get stuck in the identity of being in the process of doing rather than having done.
Building a business and building a business.
Right.
Even though the business is like bringing in money and like,
Yeah, I mean, I got stuck in that identity of beginner. So like when I started my online business, like, I joined all the groups and all those things. And so I got stuck in that place where everybody was a beginner. And I still remember so clearly, like several years down the line, right? And I was a beginner and I was learning the ropes and all these things and doing all the things that beginners do. And I remember the point several years in when I remembered that I have 20 years of marketing experience and an MBA.
Yeah.
Like I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
Because I'd identified so much with this beginner energy.
Yeah.
I forgot that I had the experience. I was totally not a beginner.
Yeah.
Like I knew what I was doing, and I had that knowledge and confidence and experience to back me up. But it wasn't, I just got stuck,
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was really interesting, because how the hell do you forget stuff like that, right? Like that was a big portion of my life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, me too. I forgot for many years that I was, for 10 years, the owner of a multi-7-figure business that I built from scratch with a business partner. Like
I remember you telling me that. I'm like, are you serious? Like, what are you doing, like, as a beginner? Like, you're clearly not a beginner.
Yeah.
I remember that as well. And I think, I think it's really easy to get stuck in that I'm in the process phase, right? So if you're listening to this, just ask yourself, like, where, just be honest. Like, where could you maybe accept that you have arrived,
Yeah.
Or at least a little bit arrived.
Yeah.
Right? And what's keeping you from being in that place? So the identity piece is important, but I also think, like, for me, there's really an element of like belonging,
yes,
and external judgment.
Yeah.
So like, I sometimes, not always, like, I mean, this is one of those things that I go back and forth on as I think I grow into it more.
Yeah.
But I still kind of fall into sometimes, right? So like, sometimes I just find it really difficult to tell people that my life is actually really good now. Because they're struggling, and I know they're struggling. And then I have this dilemma, like, do I pretend that my life is worse? Because I don't want to make them feel bad.
Yeah.
Or is that like a really bad message to the universe? And I should just like own that things are good for me and that that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
But I find that really quite difficult, because people are used to, I don't know, like, again, like this whole collective thing of life being hard, and when one lone person kind of separates from that and suddenly sees success, they're almost like not part of the group anymore.
Yeah, but what if by them owning their success or owning their being happy with where they are, they lift up the other people? Whereas if you keep quiet about it, that's never going to happen, because everyone's still like struggling and building.
Yeah, but I still find it difficult.
And so, well, yeah, it's natural, but
but it's surprising me a little bit, because like, so where I am now, I'm really thinking about that, because through like a whole series of events that have happened recently, basically where our move to Ireland stands now is that we're going 6 months later than expected, but we're going without a mortgage. So we're going to be basically financially free when we get there. And that's really difficult.
And that's also a massive shift.
Yeah.
Like, because you went from the place where you were going to go and you were going to work because you needed to work. And now you're going to go, but you don't have to work.
I don't have to, but I still want to.
Obviously, yes.
Right?
But there's a big difference between
Yeah.
you want to and you don't have to. It's
Right. And so I'm experiencing that now. So like now, I mean, I can run my business, and I am, and I will, because I enjoy it, but I'm approaching it from a slightly different perspective. Because I don't have to really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice. I'm not saying like that we're like sitting on millions of dollars and, and it won't come in handy. Sure, it'll come in handy.
Yeah.
We can go quicker, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still approaching it. I find like I can finally see what it means to approach it from a place of like, what would be really fun and joyful to offer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than like, how can I create this money?
Yeah. And I think you're not alone in this. I think there are a lot of, women especially, who either have a day job that brings in a lot of money, and so they don't have to run their business, but they're doing it because it's fun and they enjoy it. Or they have a partner who, makes a lot of money. So again, they don't have to, but they do because they enjoy it. And it's like, it's hard to talk about that sometimes.
Yeah, I really think it is, and it's kind of, it just, how comfortable am I as well with life being good, right? Like I'm already uncomfortable even now. Sometimes, depending on who I'm talking to, I'm uncomfortable saying that life is good because I don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel bad.
But how they feel is up to them. Like I can hear your story and be like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so inspiring. Like that brings me new dreams for my own life. Or I can be like, stupid Joanna. She always gets like everything always goes well for her. Joanna has everything. I have nothing. Like I choose how I can take it.
I'm dying laughing here. You just called me stupid Joanna on the podcast.
Stupid Joanna always gets what she wants.
Oh my God, I'm pretty sure like I've said that about people before.
Okay. Perfect example then.
Yeah.
Perfect example. So like I can use your situation to lift me up, or I can use it to beat myself up.
Yeah.
And drag myself
I
down.
understand that. And I mean, logically I understand that, but it's still like being in that, it requires a total shift. Like, of like who I am and how I spend my time and what do I do for fulfillment and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I mean, even in a situation where you don't take away the money aspect, I mean, I say I won't have to work. What I mean is I won't have to pull in a very specific amount of money to cover the mortgage.
Yeah.
Like the money will still help.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice to have, but it's not like necessary.
Yeah. I mean, we'll survive. Basically, we'll survive without it, right?
And you'll survive well. It's not like you're just going to be like, oh my God, we're drinking water and eating beans.
No. But we'll survive in like an okay way. But like, my money will probably go for things like holidays.
Yeah.
Flights, right? Like, okay, it doesn't matter like the details of my financial situation, but but I mean, what I mean is like, even if you take that money piece away, like to just consider who you are when things are going well for you. Like when your like main concern is no longer like paying the mortgage or paying the bills. And this can happen when more money comes in, or it can happen when expenses fall away. I mean, that's actually one of the big changes in our lifestyle. We have a whole bunch of really big monthly expenses here that we will not have there. And that's part of the reason for why that's, so it's not a matter of bringing more money in. It's a matter of getting rid of expenses.
Yeah.
So, so that's a big thing. But like, it requires you to be a totally different person when you're not like constantly trying to create more.
Yeah. And it requires being willing to let go of that identity of builder and struggler and step into the identity of inhabitor, liver, coaster, traveler. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think I wanted to talk about this because it surprised me. So some of my reactions to to me, even now, like I admitted it now on, on a podcast. I mean, it's not super public, but it's pretty public.
Anyone can listen on iTunes.
That this is happening and this is a possibility for us, right? I feel really quite no, it feels quite difficult.
Yeah.
You know, that people will judge me,
Yeah.
that something bad will happen as a result.
Ooh. You can't get too good, otherwise life's going to come and knock you down.
Yeah. You know, and I'm just surprised at this stuff coming up, right?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting, I've been wanting things to be better and better, obviously, for a very long time. And I just wasn't expecting to arrive and have all these kind of almost conflicting feelings, because I know who I am when I'm building it, right? Like I know who I am when I'm striving towards.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't know who you are when you're living in the house.
When I arrive. And that's totally normal, because I never have arrived before.
Yeah. This is a new place for you. It's a new identity. It's a new way of living.
So it's not always like we imagine that when we achieve our goals and when, you know, that next thing happens, will be like life will be awesome all the time. And it's not necessarily true, right? Because we have all this mindset stuff coming up.
And also I think we expect that there's going to be like fireworks and like party and like the world is going to celebrate the fact that you've arrived. But sometimes it's super subtle.
Well, because arriving can be different things, right? You can kind of like, I don't have those external things in my life yet, but I feel good about where I am.
Yeah. Like internally, you're there.
Yeah.
Because you feel very, very different about your life.
Yeah. So I'm not kind of fighting. I'm kind of accepting my life the way it is. I'm not fighting against it all the time, trying to make it different or create or whatever, you know?
So how can we make it easier to tell others or to tell our friends? Like, you know, a couple weeks ago when I spoke up in the Master Gut and said, you know, things were going well.
Yeah, I think we have to, like, that's an inner process, you know, like to notice what's coming up for you and where you feel uncomfortable and where you think you'll be judged, because that's where you're judging yourself, right? So I judge myself for like having a life where I'm not working potentially, because every single time I say that, I feel the need to underline, but I will, of course.
Yeah.
You know, like, which for the moment is true. Like, we'll see how things evolve, right? But like, for the moment, that is true.
Yeah.
So I think it's an inner process of being comfortable with life being good. And that's just a really good question to ask yourself. Like, are you okay with your life being good?
Yeah. And are you okay with sharing that with others, with your friends? Because one thing is things going good, but you're keeping it behind wraps, like, but another thing is sharing it with, like, sharing the news with the people in your life that are supposedly your friends.
I guess it's the same as like relationships as well, right? Like when like everybody's single and then the first person of the single group finds a partner and like, are they flaunting it? Are they not flaunting it? Like you can draw parallels.
Yeah.
It's basically you leaving the herd.
Yeah.
You leaving the group.
But you're not necessarily leaving. You're just, because you can still be in the group, but things have shifted. It
depends what things tie you together. I mean, if the group identity is around partying because you're all single, then you are going to leave the group. Like it's what happens when people start getting married, having children, right? Like those things really shift. And I think it's the same for entrepreneurs, right? Like when you stop being in that building phase, you leave those groups. Yeah. And you have to move into other groups. Yeah. Where you're surrounded by different kinds of people who talk, you know, somebody who's no longer concerned about getting their first clients is talking about totally different things, right? So,
and sometimes it can be hard to find those groups.
Yeah.
It's like I have consciously left most of the business building groups that I was in, and I've been looking for author groups, but I've really only found like one. And because also a lot of the author groups I know of are for people who are just getting started or just writing their first book, or so even though I'm not like building, like living a full-time income from my writing, like I've written 9 books, like I've got the process there, you know, like it's just about building the rest of it. So I haven't really found those communities yet.
Yeah. And I wonder like how much of that is to do with like you not being fully in that identity yet, right? Like I have certainly seen in other places that when I am in a certain identity, then those external things show up. Yeah. Or maybe they've always been there, but I'm willing to notice them. Yeah. You know, like as an example, like one of the things that we want or that I want from my life in Ireland is more like more local community who cares about the same things I care about,
Yeah.
So energy work and spirituality and stuff. And I've been in Belgium for 25 or 6 years, and in the area I'm in now for 10 years. And I've been saying this the whole time, once I move. And just last week, I realized that there's a women's circle, like a meditation circle that's run like on the next street to mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like, it's not that I created this. Like this has clearly been here. You know?
Yeah.
But however you want to explain it, like either I shifted into a parallel reality where it exists, so I can see it.
Yeah.
In any case, it's to do with my own internal shift.
Yeah.
Because I did not see it before.
Well, and I think that's a huge thing, because when you're focused on when I move, I'm going to have all these great things, that's the reality. But like when you stop and you're like, I'm okay where I am, then you can see the good stuff that's in your area.
Yeah. And that's also being comfortable with life being good, right? That it's not constantly like, this sucks, and so I'm creating something else.
Yeah.
But being comfortable with what's already good in your life now, right?
Yeah.
And we just have a problem with this being like relaxing into a good life. Like, why is it so hard? Like, why has it been so like glorified, that we have to be constantly
hard work?
Yeah, it comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's the hard work.
What's the Protestant work ethic that I think even if we don't belong to that religion, we've grown up in countries that perhaps, follow that.
And it's the work that acts as an identifier, right? Like, I used to play around with language in this way because I very much identified myself with the job I was doing, right?
Yeah.
So I would be very careful not to say, I am whatever it was, a marketing, whatever. I can't remember what my title was at the time, but like not to identify with that title. Like, I am a marketing director or marketing whatever executive. I work as. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So that, and I remember doing that very consciously for a while so that I would separate myself from that identity, because I wanted to do something else. And I realized it was, after I'd started on this spiritual personal development stuff. And I knew that because I was so attached to that, I would never allow myself to do anything else because I thought of myself as that marketing person. Yeah. And so I couldn't do anything else. Right. And I had a question like that from someone this week. One of my clients asked me, they said, I'm retiring and I don't know what that means. Like, who am I without work?
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, when I quit my first business, I didn't know who I was, which is why it took me a year and a half to like figure out what I could do to bring in money, because I had no idea who I was. And then most recently, I think I spent the entire last year getting comfortable with saying I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I also do these other things. But like putting author first, it was really, I kept forgetting, like I'd made the intention to do it, but I still kept forgetting. Like people would ask me what I do and I would say other things. And then, finally.
But that's still identifying with something that you do.
Yeah, but that was intentional. Like
that's a slightly different conversation though, right? Yeah. Because you're still identifying with something.
Yeah.
Like something like a profession of some kind, right? But what if you don't? Like, who are you without that?
Yeah.
Like, I find that really difficult, actually. Like, and maybe this is a good exercise. So I can't remember, like, in which program or which group. Like, I've taken so many things over the years. But I remember somebody, like, giving us this challenge, which I never managed to do, was to, like, introduce yourself without talking about any of your, like, identity roles. So not like, I'm a mom of 3 and an author.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So what do you say? I have these small humans in my house that I feed and care for every day, and I'm
supposed to just paraphrase it. Like, you're supposed to, like, drill down to who you are without those things, right? Like, and it's very difficult to separate ourselves from the roles, from the identities that we've taken on, from the identity of mother or wife or author or business owner or whatever, like whatever those things are, which is why when we lose one of them, it's so difficult, right? And whether we lose one of them because we're fired or we lose one of them because like we don't have to choose for them anymore, it's the same thing. We're still need to be comfortable with life being in a different way. it's when you strip away all those other things of achievement, of everything else, like, who are you? And that if you don't know that, then you will never be comfortable with life being good, because you'll always make that life being good dependent on achievement and things you're doing, and those can always fall away. Or you might always, you can choose for them to fall away.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I think another thing that's really important, and this is also something that came up in the Master Gut, was because I feel like things are going really well this year, and I'm like achieving my projects and achieving my goals, and I'm feeling really great, and I feel like I've hit that tipping point, and I have really clarity. Like, I felt bad about showing up for the call a couple weeks ago because I felt like things are going well, so maybe I don't belong in this group anymore.
Yeah. So it is like, there is a belonging thing. Like, in a group like that, we actually talked about this for a while, didn't we? Because, like, we don't want to be creating problems or looking for problems.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about the group being there as support to help us grow.
Yeah.
Like, not to solve problems.
Yeah.
Because we were all coming to the call kind of thinking, oh, what problem can I come with today? And if you don't have a problem, then you don't belong.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, there have been the last few calls, I've sat there kind of the night before thinking, okay, what am I going to bring to the call? Like, I don't have a problem. Like, I'm working through everything. Yeah.
But, like, so, it doesn't, like, that's never the way I approach those calls. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I always just thought about, like, what would I like to talk about?
Yeah.
Get other people's opinions on, or like, what topic am I thinking about that I could, that we could talk about together. And so there's an element of, like, being able to grow.
Yeah.
And evolve.
Yeah.
And learn from a place of being good.
Yeah.
Not from a place of not enough.
And accepting support and feedback even when things are going well.
Yeah. And acknowledging that you need them, right? Yeah. Or that not that you need them, but, like, that they're good for you.
Yeah,
like
that it would be helpful.
Yeah, that you can still grow without being in, like, it's not just struggle to non-struggle. You grow beyond that as well. So, yeah, I don't think we have any answers.
But for someone who's listening to this, who's in that kind of spot, like, what can they do? I mean, I think it's, first of all, kind of being honest with yourself about where you are, and maybe encouraging yourself to rise above the house and look down at the house and, like, see where you are in life.
Yeah.
And see that bigger picture.
Definitely see the bigger picture, zoom out. I would also say, I feel like a lot of this really boils down to knowing yourself, you know, like, and knowing what makes life good. So you can't be truly comfortable with life being good if you don't know what that means, right? Like, and often, like, we think that once we've achieved our goals or whatever, like, all we're going to do is, like, I don't know. That's kind of what I thought about, my life when I achieve my goals. I'll read a lot of books and, like, do some shopping and go to the beach. But I don't think that's going to be fulfilling to me. And so it's about also, like, recognizing the stuff that really, like, excites you. Like, what makes life good is not just peace and quiet. It's also, like, some kind of sense of fulfillment. And so what fulfills you, right? Like, I was telling Holly before we jumped onto this episode today that, like, I'm realizing that I love running a business. Like, I really enjoy creating offers and selling things. I enjoy that process, and I enjoy that exchange. And so it's silly for me to think that my life being good means that I won't do that anymore. That actually makes me sad, and maybe that's another reason for why I was keeping it at bay.
Yeah.
Because I thought that it meant that I would have to give up all these things that I like doing. Like, I like to, have targets and have intentions, and I like doing all those things. So if a life that's good means that I just read books and that's it, that doesn't work for me. And actually, I'm having a huge, like, aha moment right here live. Because I think that's partly why it's so important to really define what success means to you and what life being good actually looks like for you specifically, because it's not going to look like for anybody else in the world. And it's very difficult to be honest about it because, like, you haven't been there before.
Yeah.
So you don't.
And what does it feel like? Like, how do you want to feel? Like, is it feeling safe? Is it feeling adventure? Is it feeling like, how do you want your life to feel?
But even that, I think that's really difficult. That's not always, but I think it can be really difficult. Because, for example, if you're totally overworked and overwhelmed, then all you're going to be craving is peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Right? But does it mean that that's your ideal life? Maybe not. Maybe.
No. But maybe that's the first step. Maybe that's the first step on the path. And then once you've got your peace and quiet, then you can see the next step. Because that's the thing. Like, sometimes we see the whole path in front of us, but oftentimes we don't. So it's sometimes we can just see the first step. And also, I think about like when you're daydreaming, what are you daydreaming about? When you're fantasizing, what does your fantasy life look like? What does it feel like? I don't really do that anymore, but like when my life was really bad, 15 years ago, like I had this very active like daydream life where I was like constantly envisioning a different life. And it wasn't so much about the things that I was doing, but it was about how I felt that was different in this fantasy world that was like such a big escape from my life at the time.
When I think about like what I was, would be daydreaming about and what I crave, like I'm that example of someone who's overwhelmed and overworked or who was all the time. And so every time I imagine my ideal life, there's a lot of kind of peace and quiet in it. But once you have that, then that just gives you space.
Yeah. To look at the next step.
To look at the next thing. So maybe like as you're figuring out like what life being good actually means, first of all, you might realize that you already have some of that, right?
Yeah.
And second of all, just be comfortable also with change and knowing that like what you think of being good as being good in your life can change depending on what you need. So it's like really important to like do this regularly and keep checking back in, right?
Yeah. And just getting to know yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
Yeah. I think that's the key to just about everything.
Yeah, I really, really agree. The more I do my own spiritual work and growth and stuff, like the more I see that like it's all just about getting to know yourself. Yeah. And those are all the lessons, right?
Yeah. Know yourself.
Right.
All right. Do we have any final takeaways or is that pretty much it?
I think that's it. I think that's enough. I mean, if anybody has any questions, then feel free to reach out.
Yep. Email.
Joanna at joannahennon.com.
Or Holly at hollywharton.com. And we would love to hear from you.
We would.
Good luck with getting comfortable with things being good. Yay!
Thank you so much for listening. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Next week's episode is something very new and different. As you know, I haven't had guests on the show for ages. I haven't been doing interviews, and I'm still not doing interviews. This is a conversation with someone that I know well enough to know that I can have an interesting conversation with him that will be, I think, useful to you. And him, you heard me say him. I have the first man on the show. Times are changing. I figured it was about time to get in touch with the other 50% of the population here on the podcast. So I will keep secret about what the episode is, but I think it's a really, really good, juicy episode. And it's about a topic that's very close to my heart. So tune in for next week's episode. And in the meantime, remember to visit hollywharton.com/353 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.